the Sherry Cask matured at 43% and the Port Cask matured at 43%. Which one is better? Hey guys, thank you for joining me today on McIntyre's Malts. My name is Wade. We are going to do a comparison video, the first Australian whiskey comparison video that I've done on my channel between the two baseline core expressions from Overeem Distillery, the Sherry Cask matured Overeem. We have the Port Cask matured Overeem. Both of these whiskeys are non-chill filtered. Both of them are 43% ABV and both are from single casks. But nonetheless, I think this one will be fun given that I have done individual reviews on both the Sherry Cask and the Port Cask. So you can check the videos out. I'll put links in this video for you to check those videos as well. But today we are here to compare the two, tell you what I like about them, which one appeals to me more, and ultimately enjoy drinking some whiskey along the way, right? Let's pour some whiskey into my glasses and start with the nosing. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the Australian whiskey industry, in its current form, it's only really been in play for about 30 years now. Okay. Now the port. All right. So as I say, both of these whiskeys are part of Overeem's core lineup. They are easy to get. They typically fall in the range of $190 to $200 Australian, so there's not a lot in it. This is, in terms of a comparison for neck and neck, it's pretty much as close as you're going to get. Okay, Sherry Cask, Port Cask. So right away, I'm not sure how well you're picking this up. I cannot detect any difference in the color of these two whiskeys. To me, they look identical. Perhaps you might see a slight variation. The Sherry and the Port Cask. All right. The Sherry Cask appears to be a little more viscous. The tears are a little bit slower to run down than the Port Cask, but not a lot in it, right? Let's begin on the nose with the Sherry Cask. Lots of malt, lots of honey, a very light honey, very floral honey. There's a vanilla here. Little touch of oak, just underlying, very little. Slight leather note too. Okay, now let's nose the Port Cask. A lot more going on the nose here. The malt is intensified. The honey's there, but it's a darker, richer sort of scent of the honey. Very similar on the nose. No vanilla here. Some darker fruit elements. A little more of the leather, a little more of the oak. Very, very similar. But the Port Cask maturation seems to have more of an imprint on the Overeem spirit. Definitely on the nose, it just seems more developed, that it's taken more grip on the whiskey compared to the Sherry Cask. but to give you a really sort of simple baseline between the comparison I'm getting on the nose. Light oak, light honey, light malt, little vanilla, floral elements, deeper honey, richer honey, deeper oak, some plums, darker plums, a little bit of raisin, and a bit more of that leathery smell, but it's a bit more like, think leather couch, smoky and sort of sweet, but it's not peat smoky. Imagine somebody's had a cigarette while they're sitting in their study and they're at a mahogany desk and they're sitting in a leather armchair. Cucumber, I don't know why. Fresh cut cucumber all of a sudden. I think it's the greenness. There's more of a fresh field, like floral youthfulness in the sherry cask, whereas the port cask has more of that darker, richer influence, right? Dark fruits, mahogany. They both have the malt, but it's more prominent here. Yeah, again, the cucumbers, weird. First time I've ever got that on a whiskey. Fresh cut cucumber. Very much. I hope that gives a clear indication of the difference I'm getting on both of these. Let's begin with the palate now on the Overeem Sherry Cask. Very pleasant. It does have the malty, the cereal notes are coming through. It's got a bit of a little bit more of the bite. It's not a high ABV, but there's that prickliness is there from the alcohol. I would say it's youthful, but very well developed for what I imagine would likely be a younger spirit, a younger whiskey that's been bottled here. Nice malt, nice vanilla. Very, very much floral and grassy with malt. It's very different for what I'm typically familiar with from a sherry matured whiskey. It hasn't given it the typical notes that I expect to find on a sherry matured whiskey. It's lovely, but it just hasn't quite given it the impact that I would anticipate on a whiskey from a sherry maturation. Okay, so now I'm going to try the Port Cask Overeem on my palate. Right away, completely different mouthfeel. Given that they're both 43% ABV, completely different mouthfeel. The Sherry Cask is very much youthful, sprightly, has more bite to it, a little more prickly. The Port Cask is more softer mouthfeel, a little more texture to it. I attribute that to it feels like there's less prickle from the ABV, so the mouthfeel feels a little more oily, but not heavily oily, but there is a clear difference between the two on the palate. The malt, the leather notes are there, touch of fruit, but it's very much driven by the maltiness. It's very much a more complete and fuller. There's a little bit of that bitter coffee and cocoa note now on the finish. It's interesting, right? And this is why I love doing these types of comparison videos, and I expect them to be different because you've taken what I assume to be the base spirit, and you've taken it and put it in two different cask types and achieved two different outcomes, two results, which is what's so fascinating and fantastic about whiskey, right? All the influence and impact that the oak imparts to a spirit, the story that the whiskey is telling me now, and the journey that all of these elements have gone through to get to this point now as we do this video together and we share an experience, two completely different experiences. And it's wonderful. That's what I really enjoy about it. I would say the Port Cask has a fuller nose with more elements that are present. The nose on the Sherry Cask is a little subdued, a little more youthful and green, floral and grassy, whereas the Port Cask nose is a little more richer, has a little bit more decadence to it, a little bit more maturity and character, if that makes sense. Overall, I prefer the Port Cask. I think it has more going on that appeals to me. It has a nicer mouth feel. I think the finish is slightly longer on the Sherry Cask for me personally. Both are great whiskies. Thank you guys so much. I hope that you enjoyed today's comparison between these two core line expressions from Overeem Distillery. And if you did enjoy the video, please make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. And until next time, I've got to go to the Port Cask. Enjoy your whiskey responsibly. Cheers, guys.